North Dakota welcome to Denver Mayor Mike Johnston.
Well, hello, great to see you all. You look none the worse for the wear after a long day of hard voting, so well done. I am delighted to be here. First of all, Josh, thank you for the introduction. I can't wait till you win the race for mayor and I can welcome you into our mayor's conference. So I will be the one to host you at the Conference of Mayors. Delighted to be here. As I was saying to James Seltzer on the radio the other day, I like to consider North Dakota like the farther northern reaches of Broncos country. You know, it's still sort of I know there's some Packers and Vikings fans in the crowd probably, but we still do our best to keep a handful of you. I actually have not been in North Dakota since I was here playing hockey as a high schooler, and needless to say, I did not win that game, so hopefully tonight goes better than the last trip, but thank you for having me back. Delighted to be with you and just want to share a little bit about where I think we are as a country and where I hope that we're going. It was about 2 years ago when I was running for mayor and I was running to an event, running late, and I was heading into a nice restaurant in downtown where we were hosting an event, and as I got just to the door, there was a guy who stopped me at the door, and he was clearly living on the streets, and he stopped and grabbed me and said, "Do you think this is a beautiful city?" He didn't know who I was, didn't know that I was running for mayor, just stopped and asked me. And I stopped for a minute and thought and said, "Well, yes, I think it is." And he said, "Well, I believe that you feel that way because you can go into places like this. But for those of us who feel stuck on the outside of it, it just feels like a heartbreaking city." I wasn't ready for that, and I thought about it a lot. And I think for sure we know that is true for people that are struggling and living on the streets. But I think more and more we feel like that is true for more and more Americans who feel like they are stuck outside the window looking in at an America they can't reach. And whether that is the guy who works construction in our town, who he and his wife have decided not to have kids because they just don't think they can afford it. Whether it's the teacher who got her license and got a job and taught for a year and then had to move back home because she couldn't afford to pay the rent, even with a college degree and a good job. Whether it's the mom who doesn't take her family out for dinner anymore because it costs $100 to do that now, and that is too much of a crunch. Or the soybean farmer who's seen 90% of their export market disappear in a massive tariff war. We know that all of these folks feel like we're fighting every day just to make it. Not just that you wake up every morning and see America's fighting some new war around the world, but that it feels like you have to fight that war right here at home just to find a house you can afford, or a job that can pay the bills, or a life that feels comfortable. And every day, it feels like the bills get bigger. It used to be I'd go to the grocery store and you could get a whole grocery cart full of groceries for $100. Now it's one bag for $100, and I find myself like everybody else, even with a great job, telling my daughter to maybe put those things back onto the shelf because you're not sure what the tab's going to be when you get to the checkout line. It's not just a feeling of being locked out of our own America, it's the feeling of being disappointed in what that America looks like when you look in that window. Right? And when you look in the window at the folks running the government now, what you see are grifters and con artists sitting on gold-plated toilets, making themselves rich off of the people, flying private planes to private islands with somebody's daughter sitting terrified in the seat next to them who is a small town waitress who thought this might be her shot. It's lobbyists with something to sell and politicians demanding payment and loyalty like those kings that our democracy was meant to dethrone. But the worst part of all of it is it feels like every day we are also being called on not just to fight, but to fight each other. To demonize anyone who is different, to discount anyone who disagrees, to destroy anyone who dissents. That's not just an America we feel excluded from. It's an America we're not sure we want a part of anyway. So the question is now how we get the rest of us snuck into the Mar-a-Lago America. That's not what we want. It's how do we actually build one that we would be proud to be a part of all over again. For me, the question is not how we got here, it's how we get out of here. And for me, that's about three things that I think this country has to do if we do want to get out of here. I'll tell you a short story about each. One is we have to figure out who America really is. We have to figure out how we prove what America can really do. And we have to show how America really fights for what we believe. You know, there's a lot of conversation now about who America really is and who is more or less American, whether we all count, whether or not if you're an immigrant, you're an American, whether or not if you identify as gay or lesbian, you're American, whether or not sometimes if you are a Democrat, you still count as being American. And I will tell you one story. I started my career as a high school teacher and a high school principal, coach track, coach soccer. I remember I had one student who was struggling as a sophomore, didn't get good grades, didn't show up to school all the time. I worked with him. He finally came around, came to senior year. It was time to apply to colleges. And he came into my office and said, Mr. Johnston, I didn't know how to tell you this, but I don't know how to fill out this form because I don't have a social security number. I said, why? And he said, well, I never told you this story, Mr. Johnston, but I lived in Juarez, and when I was a little boy, my dad was one of the people in town who thought that it was right to stand up to the cartels and tell them they shouldn't run our city. And so they came to my house in the middle of the night and murdered my dad. And my mom put me in the car that morning and just drove and drove and drove and never stopped driving until she got to Denver. And I've been here ever since, and for 15 years we've been in line trying to apply for citizenship the right way, and it just hasn't worked. I said, okay, let's work on this. So we put in the application. About a month later, they come back and say, okay, we will accept your ability to petition. If you just agree to be eligible, you must move back to Juarez and wait there. And I was furious. I said, Flavio, there's no way we're doing that. You're not going back. And he said, stop, Mr. Johnston. If I can go home and this gives me a chance to come to America and do it the right way, I'll do it. So he goes back to Juarez. He's living from doorway to doorway with a pistol in his pocket trying to move from house to house faster than the cartels can track him. Keeping me in touch by Facebook Messenger, and after a few months of me being terrified, I finally get a message that says, Mr. Johnston, I'm home, and I want to take you to lunch. I said, great, can't wait to see you. And he said, I want to tell you something, but I don't want you to be mad. I said, okay. So I sit down, we start talking at lunch. He says, Mr. Johnston, I know you want me to go to college, but I just want to tell you I decided yesterday to enlist in the American Army because I just want to give something back to the country that's given me so much. That's who America is. And when Tom Homan threatened to put me in jail about a year ago because I said that Americans wouldn't stand by peacefully and see you deploy American troops into our cities and pull grandmas out of church pews or kids out of 7th grade social studies class, it wasn't just because I knew they didn't understand who those 7th grade kids were in the social studies class. It's because they didn't understand who the people were that were actually wearing the uniform. Because those are folks like Flavio, who stood in that seat himself before and fought and fought and fought for the chance to serve this country, which is why we'll only be a country that's stronger together rather than divided. But it's also why we find that those who have fought the hardest to put the American flag over their shoulders are the ones that fight the hardest to never let it go. Because they know what it took to be able to belong. And once they belong, they cherish it more deeply than anything. So that's, I think, our story of who America really is. The next question is, what can America really do? Because I think the fundamental argument that the president and others make right now is preying on your cynicism, on the belief that these problems are not solvable. Particularly the war on American cities is an argument to say these places of crime and homelessness and poverty and struggle are a proof that none of this can be fixed, so you should blow it all up. In Denver, we have a simple belief. We believe that all of our problems are solvable and that we're the ones to solve them. And so that means not just the easy things, but the hard things. When I became mayor 2 years ago, we had one of the highest rates of homelessness of any city in the country. We had one of the worst years of violent crime of any city in our history. We saw rental prices going up higher and higher every year so that more and more families are being pushed out. So we said, what does it take for us to actually take on those problems? So we started with homelessness. And we went and did 60 town halls across the city. We talked to community members, and we fought to bring on 1,000 units of transitional housing that we could bring people off of the streets and into housing. We had folks who were freezing to death outdoors in one of the richest countries in the world in the middle of winter. We had huge encampments that blocked post offices and blocked hospitals and blocked churches, and people were living in open-air drug markets. It was a disaster. And what we said is, we don't believe people have to live this way. We started focusing on those folks most at risk, like our veterans, who we knew needed us more than anything. And now, 2 years in, we have moved more than 7,000 people out of homelessness. We have now become the largest American city ever to end the cycle of homelessness for American veterans. This means if you had the courage to serve this country in uniform, you never are going to have to sleep outside on the streets and wonder about how you'll survive. We have closed every large encampment in our city. We have moved people into transitional housing, and as of 3 months ago, we have now dropped street homelessness by almost 50%, which is a larger reduction than any city in American history. This is a solvable problem. And at the same time, we've said no one should have to live with the fear that when their kids go out at night, they might not come home safely. So we focused on public safety and doing it as a community approach to public safety. We focused on how we put more street lights on street corners that are dark, on how we get more after-school programming for kids that need them, on how we open businesses in boarded-up buildings that are nuisances and not attractions. And the result has been, over the last year, Denver has reduced violent crime more than any big city in America. These problems are solvable. And at the same time, we've said it's not good enough that you are a school teacher or a nurse or a firefighter and you got to pay 50% of what you make to rent. And so we're going to work to bring on more and more units that are affordable for working families. That means for us, we brought on more than 3,000 affordable housing units each year. And now, right now in Denver, the city where rent was going up more than almost any other metro area, those rents are now coming down more than any metro area in the country. I tell you that not because it matters for Denver, because it matters to fundamentally disprove the lie that these problems can't be solved, that we should give up, that we should burn it down, that we should walk away, that we should turn on each other instead of turning to each other. That's what we want to prove is false. So I'll say one thing that might surprise you. This third question, when we think about who America is and what America can really do, is how does America really fight for what we believe? There's a lot of talk about fighting right now, about fighting Trump or fighting MAGA or fighting Republicans or fighting the center of our party or fighting the far left of our party. But I would say that there is a big difference between fighting against something and fighting for something. When you are fighting against something, all that you can do is be consumed by the hate of what you're fighting against. And the sad part is, even if you win at defeating that thing, all you can do is now find something new to fight because you don't know what you actually got for the win. When you're fighting for something, it is entirely different. Think about why is it, if you share my faith tradition, why is it that Jesus didn't choose to use his powers to kill Judas or to kill Pontius Pilate? Because what he knew is he was not fighting against one man. He was fighting for the salvation of all of humankind. That is a different question. Why did Dr. King not say, you know what we should do is actually go bomb the houses of the Klansmen who bombed my own house? Because what he knew is he was not fighting against the Klan. He was fighting for equality. When you fight for something, it is a struggle of joy. When you're fighting for the right to vote, when you're fighting for the right to marriage, when you're fighting for the right to a livable wage, you have a sense of being in service to something bigger than yourself. And then you never lose track of what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. I think of my wife's grandfather who fought in World War II, fought in Germany, fought in Italy. And every morning he got up and looked at the picture in his chest pocket of my wife's grandmother. That was what he got out of bed for every morning, was what he was fighting for. He was fighting for the chance to come home and marry that woman and raise a family and live in a world that was free from tyranny, and that is enough to make you do heroic things. Because you've never forgotten what you're fighting for. Thank you. I'll give you my best teacher for this was my brother, who is like the taller, handsomer, more athletic version of me. And when I was little, I had a temper, and I would get really mad, often because I was embarrassed or I was sad or I was angry, and I would come at my brother and try to fight him. And Johnny in those moments would do the strangest things, which when I came at him, he would do this. He would just pull me closer. And what I realized is there are three ways you can go through the world. You can go through the world like this, ready to fight people. You can go through the world like this, ready to doubt people. Or you can go through the world like this, ready to love people. What was so remarkable about Johnny's belief is you would think if someone's fighting you, going in arms wide open is the fastest way to get hurt. What I discovered is it is also the fastest way to get healed. And when the person you're fighting is your brother, the only way out is to get healed. And if what we're trying to convince people is that this is a country full of brothers and sisters, the only way out of where we are here is not like this, it's like this. I'll close with this, because you all have had a long day. You have Senator Heitkamp to listen to, and I think maybe a happy hour coming. And so the first rule of being a principal is never talk long before lunch. The first rule of being an adult is never talk long before happy hour, so let me be short. There is a line in the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson, when he wrote it, wrote the first line that everybody knows. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal, and that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights that include the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Very famous. Jefferson, whatever his faults, was not a naive person. He knew when he wrote that line it was the boldest promise ever made, maybe in the history of the world. Never been a government of any sort in any country that had ever delivered anything close to that promise. And he knew enough to know that if you wanted to make that promise, you had to back it up. And so very, very late, at the very last line of the document, there is a very different line. And that line says, to protect this declaration, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. So I say there are a lot of folks that are first-liners. There are a lot of folks that know the first line of the Declaration. Yes, we hold these truths to be self-evident and love that. But I would argue if you look at the Americans who over the course of history have most dramatically transformed the future of this country, it is the last liners. It is the people who said, I will pledge my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor to deliver on that promise. Right? It's the last liners. It's the last liners who worked farms and ranches and general stores, who built towns and built churches and hospitals, who built cars and railroads and airplanes, who built communities. Right? It's because of those last liners that we cannot give in to an America where you can't come from anything and make it to anywhere. Right? It is because of them that we have to say that if you're willing to work an honest job, there ought to be a place to live a comfortable life in this country. It's the last liners who moved to the West to look for something new. Italians and Irishmen, Jews and Catholics, Black Americans and Native Americans who believed that this country was big enough for all of us. It's because of those last liners that we can't let our children grow up in a country where we believe that you move our country forward by tearing our neighbors apart. It's because of the last liners like the men who landed at Omaha Beach and liberated concentration camps to tell the world that it is un-American to tell the lie that only some of us are made in God's image and some of us are not. It is because of those last liners that we cannot tolerate in America where we teach each other to turn on each other and not turn to each other. It's the last liners who marched in the streets for suffrage. Right? It's women who broke glass ceilings and powered a world war and built industries and careers and families and communities who showed us that our country could be everything if everyone was allowed to be their full self. It's because of those last liners that I won't allow an America that teaches my daughter to accept any world where she's not the architect of her own world or the master of her own body. It is the last liners like the Japanese Americans in Colorado who went to kiss their mothers goodbye through the fence of an internment camp, only to walk away and put on an American uniform and go to war to keep this country free. It is because of those last liners that we will not live in an America where folks can be snatched off the streets without a warrant or without a hearing because they're trying to support their family or get their kids to school or get their grandma to church or get their spouse to work. That is what we will not tolerate. It's because of the last liners like Frederick Douglass, who grew up enslaved and taught himself to read and write, and his thinking was so clear and his conviction was so deep that American presidents called him to the Oval Office to say, help us figure out how to make this country more free. It's because of those last liners that we cannot give in to the notion that our Oval Office is a gilded and guarded room that only the rich can buy and only the corrupt can enter. It's because of those last liners that we cannot accept in America where you earn power by bullying and you keep power by vengeance. That cannot be our country. Finally, it is because of the last liners like Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner, who you may remember from the Civil Rights Movement. We're not black, we're not from Mississippi, but believed in the most American of ideas that everyone should have the right to vote. And so they went to Mississippi to register voters to exercise that right to power, and while they were there, the Klan killed them. But it is because of those last liners that we cannot accept in America where someone who stands up for their neighbor or someone who stands up for the Constitution, like Renee Good did or Alex Preddy did, can be called a terrorist or not a patriot and can be killed for their courage and not celebrated. That's an America that we cannot tolerate. So the question for you, North Dakota, is not do we believe in the first line, it's are we committed to the last line. It's not do we believe that we hold these truths to be self-evident that all are created equal. It's are we willing to sacrifice, to mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor so that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, folks will be in this auditorium saying, I am so proud of what my grandparents did. Because what they did is stood up for a country that sees all of us, values all of us, and celebrates all of us. That is the America we have built. That's the America the last liners have handed us, and that is the one we have to protect in the years ahead. Let's get to work, North Dakota. Thank you all so much for being here.
Delegates and guests, thank you for being here and for your contributions to this convention. Thank you all.